Good morning and thanks. Well, I would have liked to have been in a celebratory mood for today, which is the 7th anniversary of the moment at which the Kyoto Protocol came into legal force globally. I remember the day well. Obviously, it was February 16th, 2005. On that day, the former Prime Minister Paul Martin marked the occasion by announcing that Canada would host the first international climate negotiation ever to take place in either Canada or the United States. It would be a challenging negotiation, being the first year in which Kyoto was in legal force, and of course at that point the 11th time in which the Conference of the Parties had met on the larger Framework Convention on Climate Change. 7 years after Kyoto has come into force, we see the world turning to condemn Canada for the decision that Stephen Harper has made to send a message that we will be intending to legally withdraw from Kyoto. That legal withdrawal doesn't take effect until December 2012. Just February 14th, earlier this week, for the first time since the Durban meeting, some of the key global developing country economies met in New Delhi. And Canada was lambasted by what's known as the BASIC group, Brazil, South Africa, India, and China. In a statement, they said, quote, "Any attempt by developed countries to casually set aside their existing legal commitments while calling for a new legally binding agreement casts serious questions about their credibility and sincerity in responding to the climate crisis." In particular, the lead negotiator from South Africa said that no country could, quote, "undermine the integrity of the Kyoto Protocol." This most recent set of criticisms come on top of the initial spate of condemnation after Canada's announcement from countries including France and Egypt and the UK and the United Nations Convention itself, the Secretariat for the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Canada's position that we will seek to legally withdraw from Kyoto has brought us into disrepute, and it has, again, to revisit the events of COP17 in Durban. It puts the Canadian delegation and our government in the situation that we went to Durban and we negotiated in bad faith. This is about as appalling a position for any government to take in any international fora, really globally and certainly in Canada's history. Kyoto est en vigueur depuis 7 ans aujourd'hui. C'est une célébration d'anniversaire, mais au moment maintenant, actuellement, ce n'est pas possible d'être heureuse avec le destin de Kyoto, avec la position de notre gouvernement. Les autres gouvernements du monde appuient le protocole de Kyoto. C'est le seul protocole avec les cibles fixées avec force en loi. Seulement aujourd'hui, c'est 2 jours que depuis le gouvernement de Sud-Afrique, puis la Chine, l'Inde et Brésil ont condamné le gouvernement de Canada pour la décision de rejeter le protocole de Kyoto et pour quitter pas seulement notre cible fixée, mais aussi notre implication dans le protocole de Kyoto. In covering over our quite shameful behavior, the Minister of Environment and the Minister of Natural Resources have put forward a number of absolutely absurd claims. And in our press release today, we take those to task one by one. Certainly it is a nonsense, for instance, to claim that there will be any costs to Canada by remaining within Kyoto. The Honourable Peter Kent, Minister of Environment, has been careful in the language he's used. It's been reported in the media as though he claimed that there would be $14 billion in penalties if we withdrew. He's actually never used that language. He's been careful. He has said that it would be as much as $14 billion in compliance costs, which, of course, is strictly speaking accurate, although the entire intention is to create a false impression. There is not a penny that Canada stands to risk by staying within Kyoto. Unfortunately, for the effectiveness of the agreement, it does not have effective enforcement mechanisms. Unlike the Montreal Protocol to protect the ozone layer, the Kyoto Protocol, although legally binding, is largely counting on countries' sense of self-respect, that a country that takes on a legally binding commitment, particularly a country like Canada, will in fact keep that commitment. The failure to have effective enforcement mechanisms is obviously a weakness within Kyoto, but there isn't a single aspect of Kyoto that could force Canada to spend a dime if we remained in Kyoto, even if we didn't take on commitments in the second commitment period, which has now been launched, was launched effectively in Durban, and takes effect January 1st, 2013. We've also seen the Minister of Natural Resources get involved in throwing around some pretty wild figures. I really don't think we need to do anything to discount his claim about jobs. We quoted here from February 14th's Hansard, where he claims the oil sands will create $3 trillion of economic activity, generating hundreds of billions of dollars and over 700,000 jobs a year over the next 25 years. I think the exaggerations stand on their own for examination. I think Joe Oliver got ahead of himself there in making a number of outrageous claims. He's also claimed that, quote, we should be proud of the fact that greenhouse gas emissions in the oil sands have been reduced by 30% over the last 10 years, unquote. Now, of course, the facts are otherwise. The emissions from the oil sands, of course, have grown. They were in 2005, oil sands were 37 megatons of greenhouse gases, and that was up from the year 2000 when they were 23 megatons. We can assume that perhaps Joe Oliver meant to say that the intensity of the emissions, the amount of greenhouse gases per barrel of oil have gone down. Had he said that, he would have been almost accurate, but certainly that's no longer the case. As the tar sands move increasingly to production in what is called the in situ method, actually the amount of energy being used per barrel of oil has stalled in what had been over a period of years a decline in energy per barrel, and is now beginning to go up, and in fact went up 2% over the last couple of years. There's so much distortion in this debate, so much spin. And on the 7th anniversary of Kyoto coming into force, all we would ask within the Green Party of Canada is that we stop spinning, that we stop and look at what legal instruments are available to make a difference, to ensure that we don't pass those tipping points in the atmosphere, at which point nothing we do as a species, nothing we do as an industrial society will be able to reverse increasingly catastrophic self-accelerating levels of climate destabilization. So on this day, on the 7th anniversary of Kyoto coming into force, February 16th, 2012, let's stop, let's look, and as Canadians, let's say, let's keep Canada in Kyoto. We have launched a website with a petition, and we ask people to go to keepkyoto.ca, add their signatures, add their voices, and encourage our government to join with the responsible community of nations that are part of the Kyoto Protocol, that is every country on earth except the United States. We should use our moral suasion and our political alliances with the United States not to keep them out of Kyoto, as we've been doing, but to get them on board. And with that, I'd like to go to questions. Thank you.